Well, good morning, everyone. We're right on 9 o'clock, so very warm welcome to the June Council meeting, a very important meeting with our confirmation of the adoption of the annual plan. But apart from that, as I say, a warm welcome. Just a couple of issues this morning before we start the meeting proper. And I'll ask everyone to stand shortly for a minute silence for Anaru Thompson, the Kingmaker. Ngāti Hawa has passed away suddenly, and I've got to cut away to his tangi at about 11:45. So I think we could be just about through the meeting by then. It's over in Morrinsville, or just outside of Morrinsville. So if we don't finish, I don't want to cut the meeting too short, but if we don't finish, Liz is going to take over chairing the meeting. So with that, I'll declare the meeting open formally, and I'll deal with the apologies first. We have an apology from Hazel. And she's not well at the moment, but everything's looking fairly positive there. So an apology from Hazel. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved Liz, seconded Claire. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. And on Zoom land we have Graham and Susan. And hope you're feeling better, Graham.
Yeah, things are pretty good in Ward 11, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, and Susan, we've got a much better screen today, decent sized pictures of you both. So.
Oh dear, I don't know if that's good for you guys.
No excuse.
I'm just being a few precautions here. Just I tested yesterday, but I was totally negative, and I just have a little cough, so I thought I'd err on the side of caution and zoom in.
Okay, all right. So
Jim, can I just apologise? I'm still prone to a pretty damn good coughing bout, so I'll cut away if that does happen during the meeting. Thanks.
Absolutely fine. Thanks, Graham. All right. Could we just stand and have a moment's silence for Anna? Thank you very much. And Anaru has been a real supporter of, I suppose, local government and Waikato in particular, and of course, being from Ngāti Hawa, is, I suppose, deeply involved in quite a lot of Waikato issues, and of course, Karapiro, Cambridge is in the Ngāti Hawa area, so I think it's really appropriate that we have an attendance at his tangi. So I apologise for potentially having to cut away a little bit early. Item 2, disclosures of members' interests. Are there any? Bill?
Yep. Item 9 with relation to Plan Change 13.
Thank you. And Mike?
Yeah, kia ora, Jim. I'm not sure if it is, but the Sports Hall of Fame and that $750,000 that's been considered. Yeah, I feel I sort of am. Yeah.
So I understand that. Yep. Mike, it's different. I don't know if Gary wants to comment, but it's different from the money for the Sports Hall of Fame is different from the museum money, although it's a similar amount. But I appreciate you raising it, Gary.
Happy to take direction.
Thank you, Richard. No, I don't. From my perspective, I don't perceive a conflict there.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And Lou?
I just have a little bit of a thought conflict with the licensing. I sit on a governance board for the RSA which operates a bar. I'm also the patron of TA Sports, which is all about having sponsorship, etc. So I think I should just step out of those conversations.
Thanks, Lou. And that's it. Apart from, I also have a conflict with item 9. Just so happens my property sits in the middle of that of 6, isn't it? Yeah, T6. So I'll step out of the room when that's being discussed, and Liz will take over the meeting just for that item. And bearing in mind that, and I don't want to cut discussion short at all on any of the items, but I just ask that people try and keep to point on the way through, so that we can hopefully get through the meeting by midday. But as I say, not to foreshorten the discussions on anything, because there's some important items on the agenda. So item 3, late items. Do we have any? No late items. Thank you very much. Confirmation of the order of the meeting. Move Liz, seconded Claire. Everyone happy with that? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Item 5, councillors' updates on any attendances, and that's just on ones that have I was going to say an interest, but an influence on council. Are there any? Phil and then Roger.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So on behalf of the Cambridge councillors, I was asked to meet with the Muslim community, and they presented to Cambridge a copy of the Quran in Te Aramari. So that's for Cambridge. It's my understanding that Claire and yourself, Jim, have also been presented one over the last 12 months or so, and there is one sitting in the Cambridge library. So my suggestion was that I was going to take this to the Cambridge Community Board and have a discussion with them at their next meeting or at an appropriate time, and see where we're going to display it. But so that was great. And then, like with a few of the others as well, and yourself, attended the fundraiser for Mount Mangatautari Sanctuary Mountain, which was a great, awesome evening. So yeah, it was fantastic. Thank you. Plus other community meetings.
Yeah, for sure. Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I attended a webinar over 2 half days on the essential guide to the Water Services Bill that's in front of Parliament currently. And I have to say, I thought that was an excellent presentation of the bill and various parts, and I certainly found it a big assistance to understanding all of the relevant intricacies of that bill about what has and has not been included in the bill. So really well worth attending that one.
Thanks, Roger. Yeah, Mike.
Just very briefly, I just attended the Cambridge Community, well, the Community Board's review procedure, I guess, which was really interesting, and I was happy to feed into that.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. We attended the cemetery teams meeting, and I've actually had a discussion with the planning staff, so we've gone forward for that. I attended the Diplomatic Heads of Mission study tour, which was over in Winnipeg. Very, very good, very positive. Quite an interesting group of people, and looking at developing relations with our Pacific neighbours and others around the region. I attended a Ram Raid meeting that was sponsored by the local police, which we looked at with all of the local shopkeepers. So sitting in there and just talking about the options that we have. We certainly don't want to see a lot of bollards down the main street, so we're just looking at what options we can look at in there. And I also supported the hazardous waste collection which was very, very positive down at the old, well, I don't even call it Bunnings site now, the new TRI site or whatever, but that was excellent. And also, like Roger, I'd learned a lot out of those 2 webinars, Roger. Excellent, weren't they? And there's a lot of very interesting facts, right? So thank you.
Thanks. Liz?
Yeah, thank you. Along with Mike, I attended the Cambridge Community Board, of course, this month, and we'll continue to do that as well for the rest of the term. Attended the CCOS AGM in Cambridge, and also with Jim, I went to the Rural Provincial Conference in Wellington. Not the week before last, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I also attended one of those webinars about the Essential Water Services bill, and yeah, it was really well presented and gave a lot of good detail. I also attended a webinar about the launch of a book called Enhancing the Regulatory Effectiveness of Protected Areas, and it looks at how we can do better with protecting those SNAs and sort of stemming biodiversity loss. And what the take-home message is that we really need up-to-date information from our own communities on what their priorities and values are for particular areas. I thought it was really relevant for our community spatial plan work, and remembering that scientists and technicians can't do that. It actually has to be local people that feed into that really well. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just the monthly ComSafe report. We continue with our 30+ volunteers, and that takes a lot of time to train them, and especially with the CCTV cameras. We got into I hadn't been into the police station to see the 4 big screens around and how they work. So it just doesn't happen that these people sit there and go to sleep. So it's a big deal. Our community safety officer, Mandy Merson, just interesting, can have 20 calls a day, as people tend to be ringing her now and not the police, because nothing happens too quickly in a lot of cases with the police. So that's a big burden on her day, but she loves it. We have a good relationship with the police, which I've mentioned before with Ryan Fleming. And just interesting, he loves these cameras, and he said his idea would be to have cameras on all the main routes every 5 k's out. And then he said, really, we wouldn't have to chase too many, and we know where they are, and we just intercept them. So he said the way the cameras are going, more supportive, always supportive of that. Yeah, so it was a really interesting meeting. They always are, but yeah, it's how to keep the community safe. And these, it's the same with Cambridge and how they operate, I presume. But you've got to train these operators. We've got Mandy Merson. We're going to lose Joanna Tong, who's the administrator, because it takes a lot of time for the database, and she does the training. So we've got to find someone else. So if you know anyone else that's out there, and those are paid positions, those 2. So there's a little bit of reimbursement of their time. So yeah.
Thanks, Bruce. Okay, Susan and Graham. Nothing
happened.
No, I do. Sorry. I attended the Community Board Review workshop with Stephen Finlay, which was really interesting, I'd have to say, which I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did, but I did. And that is due to be reported back to SPNP on the 7th of July in terms of his proposals going forward. And I also attended on Jim's behalf the Future Proof meeting, which is to come back to SPNP on that same date also for endorsement or consideration. I attended a Women in Politics evening, which was hosted by Paula Southgate. It was both inspiring and entertaining at the same time. Some of the discussion, or a lot of the discussion, centered around social media use and challenges in that space. So yeah, really interesting. And I also didn't attend live, but I watched later the Dog Control Policy Review webinar. And I just wanted to congratulate Graham, Carl, Wayne and Chloe for that webinar. I thought that that you handled it really well. It's a challenging and emotive subject, and I thought that you dealt with it really well and responded to a lot of the queries that came during the webinar in a really good way. So congrats for that.
Thanks, Susan. Okay. Look, as already been mentioned, the rural and provincial meeting in Wellington, interesting and obviously keeping up to date with submissions coming in from LGNZ on the issues that we're all dealing with, the massive changes that are being forced through, whether it's waters, future for local government, RMA, and just touching on your comment, Claire, in terms of the National Policy Statement for Indigenous Biodiversity. That's another big piece of work that needs some comment on by about the middle of July, I think 21st of July, when that's required. And certainly I agree with you, it needs local input, and it really needs, I suppose, some science-led decisions made rather than emotive. You know, what's a significant natural area, and that definition, it's not just a bunch of trees really. Although they've got amenity value, they may not have that biodiversity value. So I think we've got to be really careful that we don't impose controls on people unnecessarily, but we still want to preserve our biodiversity, obviously. So thank you very much for that update. Item 6, confirmation of the minutes of the 31st of May. Can I have a mover and seconder to receive those minutes, please? Moved Roger, seconded Andrew. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. So just going through those minutes just quickly in terms of any corrections or any discussion on those minutes. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, nothing, 8, 9, and 10. Were there any, Roger? There. Okay. So moved Roger and seconded Lou, that they're a true and correct record of the meeting. Is everyone happy? No discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Document signed under council seal. Item 7. Gary, is there anything that you want to add to that? We've got the recommendation there. It's warrants.
Certainly warrants for staff.
Move Councillor Stolwick, Councillor Brown, Lou Brown. All those in favour? Contrary? Carried. Adoption of the annual plan and setting of rates. Gary, who's Ken, or who's taking us through this?
So Haven is here to take us through this matter. We have a support team involving Yolanda and Ken. And you'll recall that the LTP had a suggested average rates increase of 4.4%. It's year 2 of the LTP, and that's what we've landed on for this next year. So over to you, Haven, to work us through your report.
Thank you, Gary. Morning, Mayor, Jim, and elected members. So yeah, we've got the report there. I'm essentially looking to take that as read. And again, I do, however, want to thank all the elected members for your direction and decision-making throughout that plan to land on that 4.4%, and also to all the staff for pulling everything together so that we can present the information to you to make those decisions. So yeah, like I said, I'm keen to take the report as read. However, there are a couple of minor tweaks that have come to light that I'd like to quickly cover off. One in the resolution, and then a couple in the annual plan report itself. So on page 27 of your agenda, and the setting of the rates part of the report, there is a water rates payable by instalment table, and it was picked up that there's a minor typo in that table regarding the TA Parongia part. It does say 27th of August, however, that should be the 29th of August. So we just want to tidy that up in the final plan. So there's that one there. Then if we go, so we'll cover that off in the resolution and the plan itself. And then the other ones are all in the annual plan document. So the next one is my minor error. You might have spotted that the cover page of the annual plan report itself is in that generic council blue page. However, we've previously seen that colourful annual plan title page. So we'll just change that to line up with how you saw it a couple of weeks ago. Then on page 34 of your agenda, or page 4 of the annual plan, what we want to do there is add in a minor paragraph at the bottom just to highlight the decisions that you made during the deliberations to cover off the changes around the community grants and then the Cambridge Rest Haven Trust funding. So we just wanted to put that up the front in the annual plan. So that's one other minor tweak we'd be looking to make. And then the last one there is on page 54 of the annual plan, or page 84 of your agenda. We just talk about the some regulations that we're required to take account of, and we just wanted to include a little hyperlink through to the guiding website for that one, just so if people are in the electronic version, they can maybe find that a little bit easier. So other than those minor little tweaks and changes, we've just landed with what you saw 2 weeks ago. And yeah, as Gary mentioned, we have experts in the room to cover off any final comments or queries or anything that you have.
Thanks, Haven. Okay. Well, look, certainly before we go around the table and discussions, my congratulations to staff and councillors for landing on that 4.4%. It's pretty challenging times, and with the inflation going the way it is, to achieve that, I think has been fantastic. And there's been a huge amount of work from everybody, as usual, with these documents. So thanks, Haven, to you and your team and the whole council team, really for delivering the annual plan. And look, I just hope that people don't have to do it, but at the end of the day, I think the public almost need to take a copy out of the plans for their water charges and keep it on their fridge and just watch what happens when the water reforms go through, if they do end up going through in form of what is being proposed by central government. And it's hard for me to imagine that our community will be paying less than $800 odd for sewerage, $120 for water, and $1.70 per cubic metre on top of that, and stormwater at about $300 per house for a residential stormwater rate. So that's one of my biggest concerns, is that those charges will start to escalate. And we've invested heavily in our infrastructure, and the community has paid for it over a long period of time. So it's still one of my major concerns over this whole reform package. But anyway, I'll open it up to any comments or questions. Roger.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I'd just like to say also, well done, Haven. And I think really in this environment, when we're seeing a CPI which is up 6, 7 and likely to go up, I think maintaining the rates at that level of 4.4 is a good result. And certainly I'm sure those that are on fixed incomes and limited resources will really appreciate that we've done what we can to keep the rates as low as we can possibly, and yet we've still made the investment in urban mobility, even without Waka Kotahi's contribution. So there's still that investment on both sides of the district. And I think also the enablement of keeping that level of service of recyclables and the uptake of the bins is another important, that we're keeping that level of service there in struggling times. So yeah, I'm really pleased, and thank you and your team, Haven, and of course all my fellow councillors as well for doing what we've done to keep the rates at that level. Thanks.
Thanks, Claire, and then Liv.
Yeah, thanks. And I totally endorse what everyone said about the hard work that's been put in, and yeah, a great result. Thanks, Haven. And yeah, thanks for dealing with those queries I sent through. I just want to record that the Waikato Spring grant, it's only going to be in the annual plan as a 1-year grant, but I really supported it being paid over 3 years. And I'm worried that when it's communicated to the Waikato Screen people, that they'll see it as just a 1-year grant, whereas there's definitely was support, from the council table to support them for the 3 years. And I'm really hoping that that will be able to be communicated to them so that they aren't thinking, are we going to have to go through another application process for the next 2 years? Yeah, that's all. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Claire.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just want to actually reiterate what everybody else has said, but I want to say one thing. That I think it's actually unique that we've actually managed to be below our rate increase, below the rate of inflation. And I think that is a really marvellous achievement. I'd like to thank all the staff and all the people here for the effort doing that, because everybody's facing at least 6.9% inflation right now, and possibly a lot more. So I'd really like to thank everybody for the efforts and time put into everything.
Thanks, Dave. Are there any other comments, Gary? Did you want to, Ken?
Nothing further from me, Your Worship, but thank you for those comments, councillors. It has been very difficult to pare the budgets back to the stage where we could land on 4.4. But staff understand the position that everyone's in, the whole community. So thanks for those comments.
Okay, Phil.
Yeah, just briefly, what like everyone else is saying too, just to congratulate you and your team. But you know, and like Councillor Brown just said, we've kept it below inflation. And you look around the country and see other councils with high inflation, and I think to congratulate previous councils, Waipā district councils and councillors and staff and everything as well, to put us in this position, because it's not something you just do overnight, is it? It's you work on it over years, and for our growth, to foresee our growth and everything else that's happened over the last few years, I think it's a long-term thing from previously. So congratulate to everyone from before and now as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. It's definitely the investment that we've put into our infrastructure that's enabled that growth, which is so important for the district. So,
Your Worship, just a brief word from me that I think many of us that have got properties elsewhere, and I'll quote TCDC's 8.3%, are quite appreciative of the staff and all of us around this room for achieving what we've achieved.
Bruce. Okay, if there's no further comments, then we have the recommendations A through to E, I think it is, Gary.
So we should just subject to the minor amendments.
Yeah.
Covered by Hayward.
So there was the 3 minor amendments that date, shifting it to the 29th of August, the cover page changed, and then a hyperlink. And
Very happy to move.
And seconded, Roger.
That's another one done.
Okay, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, item 9. This is to do with the operative plan changes 13 and 18, and that's where I've got to declare an interest, and I'll move over for.
Could have used your laptop, Jim. Okay, so yeah, item number 9. Thank you, Tony. Good morning.
Good morning, kia ora koutou. So this is pretty much a formality. So you'll recall that plan changes 13 and 18 went through, and we had some good decisions on those. So this is just the final stage of the RMA process to make them operative. It is a formality under the Resource Management Act, and the operative date we're looking at is still on track for around the 28th of July. I'm happy to take the report as read, Madam Chair, but I am aware that there might be some questions around T6 or some of the content of plan change 13, perhaps. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Any questions on this item? Andrew.
I don't have a question as such. I just want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that goes into these plan changes, and yeah, congratulate your guys on and yourself on achieving what you have. And I'd like to move the recommendation.
Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lou. So yeah. We've got a mover and a seconder. All in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Right, I'll vacate the chair and bring Jim back.
Right. Item 10, organisation key performance indicators. This is Gary.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you'll recall that we have a set of key performance indicators that fall out of the long-term plan, the community outcomes, but then there are the performance indicators that, well, how do we gear the organisation to deliver those indicators? And so annually we survey residents and we survey staff, and we look at those things that we need to turn our mind to that will assist us to best deliver the LTP. So George is here to assist us through the report. We've worked extensively with the leadership team within council. We've consulted with the Chief Executive Performance Review Committee, and we've come up with these proposals for you to consider today. So George, if I could pass to you to just work through your report, please.
Thank you. So I won't go into detail. I guess in terms of the document itself, the leadership team have identified 4 key focus areas that I'd like to put focus on over the next year, and they're outlined in the report. In Appendix A, it goes through what actions will be delivered in support of those focus areas and how we will measure success. And then Appendix B also goes through our external priorities and what the year 2 milestone from the LTP is. So I'll just take any questions if anybody's got any in regards to those. I know Claire, you did have some questions, so I have asked Dawn if she could respond to those. Yeah.
Is she going to just take these now, or do you want me to?
Is that okay?
Yeah,
if
fine.
Dawn takes those questions now. Yeah.
If you finish your general comments, then it's just open for questions now. Claire, have you indicated you've got some?
I sent them through earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? Oh, Dawn, are you?
Sorry, sorry, I'm just trying to bring up the email. I wasn't quite ready, sorry. The with respect to urban mobility program, you were asking about the effectiveness of our connecting with our community around that program. Councillor Stolwick may wish to comment as well as the chair of the governance group and the reference group. It is early days with respect to those groups. At the moment, we're still working through confirming the alignment that will be prioritised in terms of the first sort of cab off the rank with respect to Te Amutu and Cambridge. So at this stage, the reference group are invaluable in terms of helping us guide what the community may look for, but we're really thinking that the value will be from those people as we move through into a much more detailed assessment in terms of those sites, and we start to draw on schools or businesses or adjacent residents, those sorts of people more immediately affected. So I think it's off to a good start, but early days yet on that particular one.
Yeah, I will just make a quick comment. So that group has yet to be able to meet in person, and that has been such a barrier. Like any good committee, you need to gel the members, they need to be able to trust each other, they need to be able to work together. We've been unable to do that. So that will be a key priority going forward, meeting in person and having some really good, robust discussion around the table.
The reason I raised it is because we identified early on that it's not just actually putting in the cycleways and things, it's actually making sure that the community understands the thinking behind it and they're committed to it. So in a way, I saw that as a really important dimension of creating vibrant communities, and the I suppose the KPI or the priority doesn't sort of, it talks about the work program, but I just feel that those sort of joint committees that we wanted to set up, you know, that the idea was that we'll be successful and the outcome that we get is going to be something that the community really embraces and supports. So I don't know whether or not the wording of that should be changed there, but if you're happy that, I mean, it does cover the implementation of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, I mean, we can look at it. I guess it does talk about confirming the work program as well, which would be part, you know, which would reflect those discussions, I guess, and those groups working together.
Yeah, and then the next point that Dawn's going to raise is about a communication plan as well, which is just important. So yeah, so that we're getting that message out. Yeah.
Just make a comment regarding the governance group. I'm a member of the governance group, as is Lou, and I certainly think it's a good initiative starting off with this consultation early on in the discussions about what and where our urban mobility network gets developed. But I do sense a degree of frustration amongst the members of the group, particularly when we find that, again, the Waka Kotahi funding has been withdrawn. And of course, it affects the capability of council in terms of extending that network. And I think that frustration is coming through in that governance group as we try and see what can be done with what little money we've got. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Lou?
Through your worship, I actually agree totally with what Councillor Gordon just stated, but I do feel too that the limitations we have with Waka Kotahi are important and have a major effect, but also not being able to meet physically. A lot of these people are not that au fait with utilising Zoom technology, and they are members of the public. They're often short of time and find it very difficult and a little bit, as I say, concerning for them. They find it probably overburdening them. So I just feel that once we can get into a meeting room where we can discuss this openly, and it's really been a problem to find a definitive figure that we're able to actually invest, isn't it? It's been quite difficult. So it's one of those problems, but I do feel this is a great positive move, and we will move forward in time.
Thanks, Lou. Any other comments? No. Okay.
I raised a few other things that Dawn's probably going to speak to. Yeah.
So yes, and I believe one was a reference to a workshop request that Councillor Gordon and yourself, Councillor, have requested around a workshop that looks at supporting our community to prepare for climate change impacts within the community. That is on the work plan. It's now sitting with Kirsty in terms of the GM strategy and through the environment strategy, is because it's seen as very strong linkage into that work plan. But that is a conversation that's also being held with CoLab, because there's a number of councils across the region that are sort of wanting to do a similar sort of piece of work. So working together. So it is on the work plan, but yeah, it's acknowledged it's taking a little bit of time to get there.
May I just ask a question as well? It's kind of in exactly the same bucket that we're talking about, and that's the analysis of the government's emissions scheme that they've got, that they announced a couple of weeks ago in political jargon that takes, I'm sure, weeks and weeks to dig in and understand exactly what the outcomes and intention is of that. And I'd really like to see that being brought forward to the elected members so we can understand what's coming out on that emissions scheme. Would be really good. I mean, it's in the same vein as to what we can do in terms of climate change as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Roger. Kirsty, did you?
Thank you, Your Worship. We have advised elected members that we are preparing a workshop to present in August on the emissions reduction plan, and also looking at the climate adaptation plan that will be released. So I see that there will be a series of workshops with elected members within the umbrella of that environment strategy that we will also be reconnecting with you on. So that is programmed. Councillor Gordon, thank you.
Thanks, Kirsty.
Kirsty.
Yeah.
And one more on Cambridge Rain Gardens through through your worship. The question was in terms of the investment that's being done around constructing rain gardens for discharge towards Lake Tikuitu, what long-term monitoring would be in place. You may recall we're currently preparing a global stormwater discharge consent for lodging with Waikato Regional Council, and certainly looking through that, there will be requirements in terms of monitoring discharge points, so it's highly likely to be picked up there. But we were also aware that, Regional Council do ongoing monitoring of the water quality within the lake itself, so equally that would provide insights in terms of whether the work we're doing is providing the benefits that we're seeking.
Thanks, Dawn. Okay.
Through you, Jim, I have a couple of questions, if I may.
Yeah, sure. Susan.
Sorry, my hand does bend into the clouds a bit up there.
Wow.
Just a couple of questions. On page 381, the left-hand side, the actual priority is titled Continuing Progress. Shouldn't the wording actually be continuous improvement per the actual focus areas as noted in the report? I see they correlated robust planning, strengthening relationships, the road ahead, but my sense is that continuing progress is slightly more watered down than continuous improvement. Would that be fair to say, George?
Yes, that is correct, Susan. That's an error. They should be consistent.
Excellent, cool. And the other thing on that same page as well, just in that organisational KPI in the middle, says advance and adopt a customer experience strategy. We had one of these partially developed, didn't we? And did we stop it? And how? And the second question to that is how do we measure if it's successful in terms of what should that lag measurement of success look like?
I understand that it was started, but with changes in staff, Sally is leading that piece of work, and I think is only in the very early stages of it in terms of defining what the scope of that piece of work might be. I anticipate that the strategy itself will identify how what actions will be taken, and then how success is measured in terms of the application of that strategy.
Okay, so you're saying...
Susan, you've gone mute.
Sorry, so it would be, is it premature then to put any form of measure of success then in that right-hand column, I guess is my question.
Yeah, in my opinion, I believe so. We do monitor a lot of customer metrics, and they will be feeding into the customer experience strategy to understand how we want to influence those.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. And final question, probably a really stupid one, but I'm pretty good at those. Page 383, at the bottom there in the lag measure of success under the preparing for climate change matter, it says real water loss and water consumption quantities target as per LTP. What does that relate to in terms of the key lead action? Or should that not be there? I'm just sort of, I need explanation there.
Yeah, you're right. These lag measures of success are set through the LTP, so they're unable to be changed at this point in time. But I do appreciate that there is potentially a disconnect between that lag measure and the action measures. We can put some additional ones in potentially and have a look at that. But for interest's sake, as we report on these actions, but we can't fundamentally change the lag measures within the LTP at this point.
Oh, it didn't really make much sense just as a sentence there standalone. So some context would probably be, but would be helpful.
Okay.
Cool. I think that's all. Thanks, Georgia. Georgie.
Thanks, Susan. Okay. Any other questions or queries? So we have the recommendation on whatever page it is, but that's 3A through to C. But with that one change that Susan brought up on page 381, is that correct?
Yes, we can look at that. Yeah.
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 Is everyone happy with that change? So it was moved Claire and seconded Marcus. All those in favour? Aye. Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Audit and Risk Committee, item 11. Gary is.
Thank you, Worship. So, Kim?
So I'll take it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's okay. Sorry, Jenny Wilson is away sick today, who would normally be here. So just in terms of really probably the key thing, couple of things to highlight from the report is prior to the Audit and Risk Committee, there was a top risk workshop facilitated by KPMG. So that sought to review council's top risks and discuss what our risk appetite is in association with those. So we're in the process now with the leadership team, we'll look to refine those and bring them back to the Audit and Risk Committee for further discussion and approval at the September meeting. The other key things probably referenced in the report that are of interest are the 2 follow-up internal audits and the really pleasing results that were received in regards to payroll and business continuity. And then the third real highlight, I guess, was the follow-up audit around cybersecurity, where Waikato was identified as the top council across those councils audited. So they were the highlights, I guess, in the report.
Thank you for that, Butch. Any questions on those minutes?
I just want to thank you very much for that workshop. It was excellent. And I think a few of us that are not in the Audit and Risk Committee were able to assess just where our council stood. And I think it's very, very positive to be able to sit down and listen to an analysis from the KPMG and just learn just what our risks really are and how we're performing. So I want to thank you very much for the implementation of that. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Thanks for that. So can I have a mover and seconder to receive the report? Move Andrew and seconded to Roger. All those in favour?
Aye.
Contrary? Carried. Thank you for that. Item 12, New Zealand Sports Hall of Fame project. Thanks.
Sorry, really sorry.
Okay, I've just been informed that Alan Livingston was attending or intending to come for this item and it was programmed for 10 o'clock. So could I suggest that we just break now for 15 minutes for a morning tea and come back at say 5 past